Hey, everybody, on this episode of GarageCast, we go over our February customer survey that we sent out. It was focused on inventory, flooring levels, and kind of what you guys are doing to work with your manufacturer as far as your profiles go for the inventory on your floor for 2025. Nothing crazy profound in this profile, but we definitely break it down into what we think is going on out there, and we kind of summarize the sentiment of dealers. Enjoy this episode of GarageCast. This is a show for anybody that has something that they want to say. It's going to be full of people with a lot of energy, CEOs, OEMs, vendors.
Best practice ideas in this industry and of neighboring industries.
We're talking to people that are on the cutting edge of processes, management.
Serial entrepreneurs, authors. We really have a feast of all different types of senior level people.
A cornucopia, as it were.
A plethora, maybe. Grab a pen, grab a cup of coffee, and have a seat. Start writing. This is GarageCast.
GarageCast. Welcome to GarageCast. Spring has sprung. Is springing. We had to hold off on recording because you had a lawnmower actually going. It's crazy. A lawnmower in middle of March already, huh?
Yeah, that I'm not driving. That's the best part about that whole statement.
Yeah, why don't you do your own yard work? You have
because if it were up to me, I would put a deck over the entire yard. That's why.
Does the butler do your yard work for you, or is he busy cooking filet mignon and all kinds of vegetarian meals?
He's washing the car right now, Tony.
Yeah, very nice. The car's So we're going to be heading into spring round. I know that you're taking off here soon to go to Cleveland to start spring round with some boat dealers and a dealership visitation. So apropos that we're doing this, we sent out everybody so they have a little color on this. We sent out a survey in February to kind of get a good state of the industry as far as inventory, flooring, manufacturers, so on and so forth, because I think you would agree with me that the winter round of 20 clubs, and even probably starting all the way back to fall, was the main thing was I have a shit ton of inventory in the dealership on my floor, and now we have stuff coming. And we also noticed go ahead.
Well, it's just a mess, right? Because you had every different scenario. You had people that purged out their new and they're sitting too heavy on pre-owned, or the people that really got on pre-owned to make some money and they're sitting on the used or the new. And so the flooring costs are through the roof, all over the board. And to your point, the inventory survey, which is what we called it. We sent that thing out and we had about 120 dealers respond. So thanks in advance to those dealers who did respond on that. But yeah, that was the goal, was try to sift through the mess.
Yeah, we wanted to sift through the mess because, again, the numbers we're telling all of our moderators, obviously, and this wasn't profound. We knew this coming out of 2024 and into 2025 that there was an inventory issue, and that quite a bit of I would say let's start at the highest level, Sam, on this one, which was the obvious thing that you could see at 2024 was unit sales were relatively flat, or maybe a little bit down for dealers as a whole. The big thing was the profit at the bottom lines of not only the departments, but the profit at the bottom lines of the dealership in total were greatly reduced, as in to the point of operating in the 4% level when it came to net operating profit. It was very paltry. And so
to be fair, Tony's talking about averages here, when some of you dealers out there are thinking, what do you mean units were down? Ours were up considerably. We did have dealers that were up considerably and also down in operating GP at the very same time. So as an average, most people were down. Marine was particularly up year over year in units, but again, margins took it all down to an operating GP that was not fun for anyone.
And that's a good point to talk about. If you're sitting there, like Sam said, and you're going, what are you talking about? My margins were fine. They're flat. They were up. Man, good on you. But in order to get a 4% net operating profit, that means there were dealers that were in the 1 to 2s as well, that were worse than that. So the median of our dealers are sitting in that area. So that was the first thing that we noticed. And then if you do any homework at all on the composite, you can go up and you can look at flooring costs, and then especially margins took a massive hit in 2024. And so you go and you look at our inventory levels and the obsolescent amount of inventory that are sitting on our floor. And what we mean by that, as far as obsolescent goes, we're talking anything that has had a birthday. Some dealers will even argue that number can be skewed because we want to make sure that our turns are equating to nothing close to a year. Meaning, if I have something 6 months, if I have something 8 months, that's when it's obsolescent, because at a birthday, I've already blown my inventory turns, which is true, because if you look at the month supply and a lot of this stuff, a lot of the month supply on some of our models were sitting in the 7, 8, 9 double digits, which that's scary.
I'm looking at Marine right now, just through, and again, I'm looking through February right now, so take it with a grain of salt. But you're sitting at 7s and 8s, 8s and 9s, all the way down the lineup. Harley Space is looking at about 9. I'm not sure what you're showing on the metric as far as the month supply.
Yeah, on the mix, they're different in the fact of, your on road is at 6.5, your off road 7.5-ish. You got a 5-month supply of UTVs. When we get into watercrafts, that's 10s. So yeah, 3 wheels are 8. So I mean, more than we want. How about that? And again, go.
Makes me want to clarify our composite definition. Maybe we need to change what obsolescence means. We've had dealers talk about slow moving doesn't necessarily mean obsolescence. Well, when you're talking about P&A and clothing and merchandise like that, I understand it. But maybe with major units, Tony, unless you're seasonal, we should maybe that needs to drop to 6 months instead of 12 months to become obsolete by our definition. So we'll definitely look at that.
Yeah, I think there's a sweet spot that we'll have to figure out. We probably would want to show both, but we'll get into that into a different episode. But the point being is, when you're looking at 7 months supply in February, that means that your model year hasn't hit or may not have hit already. So when we're talking about 7, 8, 9, 10 month supply on things, that's before you even get the new stuff to hit your floor that we still have stuff to sell. So we sit there and we think, okay, well, let's talk to our dealers, because in 20 clubs and on social media forums and whatnot, right? We can feel that things are amiss. We can feel that we have a lot of inventory, or a dealer might say, hey, listen, but I wanted to get down to raw data, and then I wanted to talk to the dealers out there who are actually boots on the ground and say, really, what's going on in your dealership? Because we hear some of this, but I don't want to make it conjecture. You know what I mean?
Yeah. First swing is inventory is a mess. Put it bluntly.
The inventory is a mess. So we had exactly 111 dealers report back into us. So the first question that we asked was, have any of your OEM partners changed your stocking profile goals in a positive way for this year? Now here's the bitch about a survey, right? Is that you look at this survey and you're trying to call out some extraordinary results. And here's what we got. 27% was a mixed bag, meaning like half yes, half no, kind of, sort of, some have, some haven't, right? So 27%, 37% were a firm no, they have not changed our profiles in a positive way. 27% were yes, they have. So I guess what we can take from that is you can look at right down the middle, and you could pretty much say that of that 27% mixed bag, you cut that down the middle, you add 10% or whatever, 14% to each number. There's a vast majority that says half of the dealers are saying no, and probably just under half are saying yes, they have. So I mean, what do you make of that?
What do I make of that, Tony? Well, first of all, that was a pretty good summary on that. What I make about it is the next line. And the next line in there, particularly with the metric dealers, say there may have been some changes to the stocking profiles, but it came with a fight from the OEMs. And that's my big, why does it have to come with a fight? And I know OEMs are wholesalers, But every OEM out there wants to claim that they're a dealer partner. And every dealer out there understands that if they don't have the OEM, then all they have is a pre-owned discussion on their showroom floor. So you need each other. So why does it come with an absolute fight? Why can't we look at why can't we just look at what the data tells us and come to a consensus that's within the same ballpark, be it an OEM or a dealer? And if you're the OEM and you're like, hey, I know your number is reasonable, I need you to be unreasonable for me. I need you to help me out in this scenario. I'd take that as opposed to just, oh no, our number's different, and then when you're in a big fight, it drives me nuts.
Yeah. So that was literally the third answer back, was after fighting to drop the profiles, we have them lower than the OEMs originally wanted, but still have higher than we would like. Okay. So that's a pretty overall sentiment. This one kind of cracked me up. So the answer to the question is, have your partners change your stocking profile goals in a positive way for this year? This was yes. Well, kind of. Polaris, Indian, and Can-Am, but they tie retail goals to the programs, which again, it goes back to, manufacturers can say, no, we've totally worked with them on the profiles and the stocking numbers. But what you'll have a dealer say, almost every one of them is, yeah, but it's tied to the incentives. It's always, there's carrots that I have to chase. So I have several of my dealers in my Metric 20 clubs that are trying to put it down on paper exactly what all of these chasing the juice programs mean. Like if then statements, if I do this, then I get that. But then if I do that, then I get this. And honestly, they're extraordinarily hard to track. Like they're almost impossible to follow. So what do you think of that?
Let me back into that answer, Tony, about what I make about this, because I sit here and some of the stuff that I've highlighted that jumps off the pages at me. Yes, inventory as a whole has been reduced, but it requires a lot of manipulation on our end, with pushback on all of the OEMs. Gear up for a tough conversation every time. And this one really gets me. It's a fight every time. And I sit here and we've talked a million times about the relationship between OEMs and dealers, but the reality is they need each other. And you're kidding yourself if you don't think you need each other. You have to have the product to be able to sell it on the showroom floor. Otherwise, you're left with just pre-owned, which is a different conversation. And to the dealers or to the OEMs who are out there, you can't bomb the dealers continually with inventory so that they feel they have to fight you every time, because you, the dealers, are the ones at every one of your dealer conferences say, we're dealer partners. We're partners with our dealers that are out there. Well, partners don't have to fight like that, cat and tooth, on every single decision. So that part jumps out at me. What I make of it is, one of the beauties of a 20 club environment is you can look across the room and you can see, hey, that guy's doing it. Why can't I? Right. And in that same spirit, you can sit there and say, I'm buried in inventory, but he isn't, or she isn't. Right? The numbers you just gave us said that you got scenarios on both sides of the fence. You got people who are complimenting KTM and those are bashing KTM. People who think that Wave Runner's the greatest, or that Yamaha's doing a really good job or a bad job with inventory, but a really good job with the Wave Runner situation, right? So you have every scenario in the room. So what is it that you can do internally to work through your situation internally? That's my big takeaway, because I don't know how much beating on the walls we're going to get with the OEMs.
Yeah. So I'm going to pose another question to you, because I have something in my head that in reading this, and I think you can see that in a 20 club, you can probably visualize in your head who says it one way and who says it the other.
Sure.
I really believe now the most profound thing that I took away from this survey is that if left unchecked, your profiles are going to just keep increasing and they're going to be packing more stuff down on your floor, right? So if you're not doing your due diligence, the manufacturers are going to ride you like a show pony. It seems to me that the sentiment is those dealers that are proactive, involved in their dealership on a daily basis, have a pulse of what's going on in their market, in their dealership, with their employees and with their customers. Those are the ones that are saying, yep, my profile was reduced. I actually had to go and kind of battle with them, and we had to come to a number that we all agreed on, may not love it. And you know what? I'm going to sell the shit out of that stuff. So it seems to me that it's the proactive dealer that has their throttle pinned versus the dealer that really is the And I don't want to say it's the woe is me, because that's not fair, because when you're in business and you have a partner, why should I have to go parse out the things that maybe are deceptive or maybe not fair to me? Like, it's a partnership. Well, at the end of the day, you're going to have to. So it seems to me like it's the dealers that are more wanting to complain are the ones that are hitting on this. I don't know. What do you think?
I think I need to go back and look at our owner's agreement that you and I have based on that last comment.
Which is...
But you notice, Tony, as you were saying that, I'm thinking about who is it in the 20 Club room, which we can identify the ones that complain all the time in the room. We know them. They immediately jump on our forefront. And you know who it isn't? The quiet ones around the table that are silently still putting 10% to the bottom line. Those are the ones who are just like, yeah, we just take what we can take. We take what we know we can sell, and we just move through it and hold margins. And yeah, we're probably not hitting the transactional ratio exactly like we want it, but the ones we are selling, we're doing a really good job, and they're killing it, right? They're actually killing it on the profitability of those units. So I do believe that both exist in the same room. And I think if dealers are aware of that, it gets back to, well, look, man, they're getting the same hand dealt to them from the OEM. So how are they playing the hand a little bit better? And it goes back to what we talked about at the start of the year, which is look inside. You can look outside for all the reasons it's not going to work, or you can look inside and say, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'm going to go ahead and put this out there. Polaris, BRP were the two manufacturers that had the most respondents that had bad and good. So it was that they're both trying to stalk us and slam us. And then some were like, they worked with us. So, to be fair, those were the two respondents that we had the most as far as like a word cloud would go. We also saw that Yamaha took it in the shorts 50-50, Kawasaki, CF Moto, KTM took it in the shorts 50-50. There's one brand that I didn't see one thing about, and that was Honda. Everybody that has Honda was like, nope, Honda works with us. Honda's this, Honda's that. So I do want to do that, to be fair, is that Honda dealers resoundingly were super happy with how their profiles were going with Honda in general. Did you see that as well?
Well, on the marine side of the fence, you got Barletta and Sea Ray as well. Two great OEMs that really, and I think we've mentioned on this podcast before, Barletta, when coming out of COVID, Jeff Harradine, in the middle of our meeting, he came to the table with, what do you think your stocking level should be? That wasn't, here's what we think. No, he started with, what do you think it should be? And they worked in it from there, because when you get the right dealers who will sell the right product and you can keep them healthy and profitable, they come back to the well and they keep taking more inventory. So I think there's a lesson to be learned from a lot of the OEMs out there, as far as those who are getting the accolades right now, quite frankly.
Yeah. In the Harley space, it was essentially they all kind of were right down the middle, which was, hey man, when you're beholden to one manufacturer, they set the profiles and they don't necessarily shove big inventory down our throat. But there's a lot to be said for chasing bar and shield, and you're talking about your hot models that you're going to get or you're not going to get. And so they do a lot of tricky stuff with their inventory as well. So
I do think on Harley, I think there's a lot of games that are played inside. You said chasing bar and shield, and right, there are a lot of different games that are played inside. And one response I really liked was, HD lets us smooth out our allocation.
Yep.
They won't change the total number. They just give us a bit of room to change when it gets to them, right? So they'll allow them to move it around a little bit, as opposed, they still have to take the same number, but they can move it around and make it seasonal or whatever they need. So I did see that with a few of the Harley things.
I think it would be fair to everybody out there is to focus on our last question that we asked. And that was, anything else that you would like to share in regard to vehicle inventory? Because, we drove them about, hey, have your profiles increased that, or have they decreased? Has it affected your flooring? And like we said, you could almost set your watch to a damn near 50-50 or a 40-40 with a 20% that didn't respond on a certain question, right? So it was split pretty much down the middle. And I will say, still weighted and favored towards the dealer not being comfortable or winning the day with whatever that number is, right? It was still weighted that. But I think the meat and potatoes of that inventory survey is in the example of the responses.
Tony, before you go there, because I completely agree with you, but I want to highlight the one thing on the top of that board, which is OEM relationships. Note that it doesn't say having a fight with the OEM. It doesn't say being aware of the OEM. You got a lot of responses in here at different points in the survey that talk about open communication with the manufacturer and ultimately OEM relationships. If you have relationships with OEMs, like other relationships, both parties are usually willing to listen. But if we're just yelling and venting both directions, it never seems to work. So on that note, yes, I agree with your examples of responses, and I think we should go there next.
Yeah, and one last thing that I'm going to put in there as well is that I can't think of words that were exemplified in here more than non-compliant. A lot of dealers were talking about if I have to, or I already have, or I'm going to. So non-compliant was a big thought on quite of our dealers' minds that answered this survey. So
yeah, I tell you, the one answer inside of that non-compliant that I liked was, are you considering going non-compliant with one of your OEMs? Yes, all of them. It's 100% dependent on our inventories, and we're going to look at that between July 1 and September 1 and adjust accordingly. So it goes back to, control your inventory or your inventory will control you.
So let me start off with, do you have one that you want to start off with? Because I have a good compare and contrast with this.
No, you hit it. You go for it.
Okay. So here's the first one. So this is one owner saying, dumb owners let their sales managers or inexperienced general managers order units and set profiles. So I put 50% of inventory issues on the dealer for not having good ordering systems in place. If I let my sales manager place orders, I'd be even more flooded with product on top of what the manufacturers are pushing. So that's one response. So I want to contrast that to this. And this is the other dealer. We'd love to have more control over our inventory. When we challenge OEMs questioning the data behind their projections, they don't have good answers. They sound like politicians deflecting and spinning, unfortunate and harmful to the financial health of the dealership. Those are two very different answers to that same question. What are your thoughts?
What I think about that is it matters who you have in the sales manager's chair and have I trained them? Because if I've trained them up to the level of being a GM, they are going to be interested in the inventory and they will have more control over the inventory. I also think if you're paying off a contribution, the sales manager is responsible for incurring a hit to his own personal paycheck relative to the inventory and the flooring costs that go along with that. I would suggest to you, for the ones that are talking about, we'd love to have more control over our inventory, I would suggest maybe the sales manager isn't involved in sharing in the expense of that. Where did you go with that contrast, Tony?
Where I went with that contrast is that I don't think one is right versus the other. I think it's an owner that is probably proactive in wresting some of that away from a general manager or a sales manager, whether they don't trust them or not, or whether they really want to have control because at the end of the day, they're the ones that see the financials. They're the ones that want to control that. I think you could have a general manager and sometimes even a sales manager controlling your inventory, like you said, if they're good and they're trained and their pay plan matters. And then at the end of the day, the contrasting statement was, why is it that it has to be more of a surprise and then an argue versus we talk often about the marine industry and the marine industry conversations, for the most part, with a manufacturer and a dealer, go something along the lines of, hey, Sam, we're thinking that this year we're going to be looking at about 82 units for you in 2025. What were you thinking? And then you respond back, well, my projection was more along the lines of 75. And they're like, all right, well, maybe 78 is where we meet in the middle, or let us justify why 82 is the number. I think it would be better served if manufacturers as a total in all the industries we play in came to the table. Which brings a bigger question of why don't they? I don't know. It could be who they have actually delivering the messages, which a lot of the dealers complain that it is, somebody that is 2 years out of college, a year out of college, that is now coming in and having to send the message from any manufacturer, about millions and millions of dollars, and that doesn't connect. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's a conversation I've had with my wife many times. It's not what you're telling me. It is the manner in your tone in which you're telling it to me that I disagree with vehemently. But to your point about the marine dealers, for the most part, they defend it. Here's why I think you should be at 82. Here's the math that gets me there. Is my math sound? Am I off on my math? As opposed to some of the times, and we're hearing this secondhand. We're hearing this from the dealers that are frequently telling us there's no logic behind the decision the OEM made as to why they think I could do 50% more units when the economy is, as wishy-washy as it is right now. So I think defending it may be a big piece. I tell you, this one just resounds with me, which is we control what happens at our dealership, not the OEMs. What happens at the dealership, right? And getting it to the dealership is a different story. But once it's at the dealership, we control what happens, not the OEMs. We just have to make things work with what's thrown at us and not be negative about it. And I think people poo-poo that like, oh, yeah, it sounds good, kumbaya and all that kind of stuff. But I just got to remind everybody that we sell something that nobody needs. It's something that they want. And if the emotion and the pulse and the vibe of the store isn't there, if we're all hanging our heads because we're mad at the manufacturers or we're mad at the tariff or we're mad at the interest rates not being where they're going to be, it's going to come across. It's going to come across in the presentation to the customer coming in the door. You agree with that, Tony?
I totally do. Right above the we control what happens at our dealership. Number one, everyday discussion with the sales manager, keeping the pressure on.
Yes.
Right. So making sure the sales managers know we need to get rid of this stuff. Number two is keep an eye on it. I don't think it's going to get better this year. Have to stop the bleeding and take some losses to get right size. So that's another thing we were telling dealers in the 20 clubs is at the point where it is hit a birthday or it is past your 6 or 8 months or 12 months, what are you doing trying to hold on to all the money as if it was gilded and gold? You have to have a business model that looks more at the idea of, man, this thing is almost worth nothing at this point. We just need to get this moving and create some enthusiasm. So again, that's more of an owner saying that, listen, we got to make sure we get right size. And sometimes you have to take a loss. Sometimes you're going to hold all the money. But I do like that the dealers are saying that a lot of what happens now that we have the inventory is that we got to go out there. We got to sell this shit. Right.
Yeah. And that's why, Tony, that's why we always talk about it takes two managers to say no to a deal and one to say yes to the deal. You can flip that during the inventory time so that it takes two managers to say yes to the deal. But ego is why sales managers walk the deal so frequently. Right. So you're sitting on inventory that's old as opposed to take the hit, to your point, pull off the Band-Aid and move on. I tell you, I love the Lemco-ism down in there. You don't go broke from what you don't buy.
True.
That's a good point, but I really like the statement just past it. I think 12 months ago, everybody had too much inventory. Now it's likely that 30% of the dealers have 80% of the problem inventory wide, right? It's a Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. You sit here and you think about what we started in this podcast. We talked about the person across from you in the 20 club. There's somebody who doesn't have a problem with the inventory as opposed to all the loud voices that have the problem in the inventory. And in the last second part of his thing said, the question is how to minimize the impact of those 30% on our business, because those 30% who are hemorrhaging all that product are just race to the bottom, giving it away. And it's causing consternation for every other one of the dealers who may be in a good inventory situation. So I like that one too.
I'm going to go to the last page. And I'm just going to read some of the headlines.
This ought to be good.
Yeah. 1, OEMs need to be more realistic on what is selling in market areas and allow retailers to order accordingly. Number 2, we just feel like the OEMs are using us for storage. Number 3, the number one issue holding back growth within the industry is a self-interest and lack of effort in the distribution of their product. Number 4, excess vehicle inventory has us right back in a scarcity mindset. Number 5, this does not create generational wealth as manufacturers would like to think. They are continuing to push higher flooring in order to ship more units. At the end of the day, we're going to balance this out by showing that there's a lot of dealers out there that are just, I have a lot of dealers that say, listen, fake news. I'm selling the shit out of whatever's here and we're going to get after this. There's a lot of dealers that do that. We've also said that there's a lot of issues with how much inventory dealers have by our numbers and by our data, and showing that also dealers are just suggesting that, God, we got to do better than looking at whether it's stock numbers or stocking profiles or RFMs or who it is that's asking for us to take this stuff, but it doesn't feel as though it's working for the dealers.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the dealers who are getting after it, they're either holding margin and they're not worried about the transactional ratios, about selling the number of units they should, or they're chasing the transactional ratios to get the volume up. They're discounting the thing to make it go away, to get their flooring down, to get the turns going through. And that customer is now in F&I, where we're making X amount of dollars per click. They're in the parts department, they're in the service department and all that kind of stuff. But the mindset is we're going to work through it. We're just going to charge right through it and take it on the nose and let's go. We're going to come out on the other side. And for the dealers who've been doing this for not years, but decades, there is another side. And we know the market will correct itself and it will come back. So we're going to take some skinny deals for a while. We're going to get through this on the backside.
Yep. So yeah, the survey, whether it was right down the middle, and it seems as though we're maybe riding the fence, it's what the actual 111 dealers submitted to us. We're going to run another one of these that we can share sometime September, October, after the hardcore selling season kind of is through for seasonal dealers at least, and we'll see what those surveys have to say at that point in time.
Well, with over 400 dealers out there, as much as a survey response at 111 is pretty good math on that, we'd sure love to see at least half the dealers responding. That'd be nice on the next one.
Yeah, that didn't shock me. I was like, come on, man. I mean, how many reminders did we send out to them? But I guess they were busy selling. So, yeah.
So, Tony, let's summarize this thing. Let's button this thing up. I think you gotta work with the OEM and negotiate. And it's, to your point, it's not coming after them and being ready for a fight. It's be ready for a conversation. They're manufacturers. They make money when they get product out of the doors. You make money when you get product out of the door. So be prepared, be watching your inventory, have the math to back up your position, and be ready to negotiate.
Yeah, I would fully agree that it seems like the dealers that are actually responding that not a massive problem is probably the dealers that went armed with data and reduced their profiles and right-sized their inventory for 2025. Yeah, I would fully agree with you. So yeah. So that was the survey results. Hope you guys have a fantastic Tuesday. For Sam Dancer, I'm Tony Gonzalez. This has been GarageCast.
Thanks, everyone.